Hello and welcome! In today's video I'll show you how I made the Wanda figurine, or Scarlet Witch, whichever name you prefer. I'm recreating her look from her first appearance in the Marvel Universe in Avengers Age of Ultron. Spoiler alert, I'm super happy with the final result, and I invite you to watch the creation process of her mini version. For some reason I like starting with the shoes, so I opened Pinterest for pattern inspiration. Sure, I could use any ready-made pattern of any boots, but I feel adjustments are always needed for dolls to ensure the perfect fit. That's why I traced her foot and cut out the sole from 2mm vegetable tanned genuine leather. I used contact adhesive to glue the pieces together. I made two identical pieces mirroring the pattern to avoid ending up with two left shoes. After painting the soles black, I pulled out my sewing machine to add decorative stitching where it should be. It makes the boots look more lifelike and natural. The next stage is installing shoes fittings. For that I installed tiny dark metal eyelets using a small hammer, but be careful not to overdo it with force and number of hits, or you might squash the eyelet so the hole will disappear and you will ruin cutted pieces of leather. So, if you don't want to start all over again, you're new to eyelets and never tried to install them before, but you really want to, you better practice and evaluate your strengths on a scrap piece of material first. I ruined about 10 or even more different pieces of fabrics and leather before I got used to them. There is nothing complicated, believe me, just a bit of patience is required. I glued together all the parts of boots. Take the rope for laces and put the shoes on the doll. It is better not to over-tighten the laces. Nothing will happen to genuine leather, but the eyelets may shift or even fall out due to strong tension. I don't tie the shoes yet, I leave that for the very end after other details. I had never worked with zippers on this type of doll before, but I was excited to try making armbands. I removed the zipper pull with pliers since it was too big and trimmed the excess length. To prevent the fabric edges of the zipper from fraying, I sealed them with a clear fabric glue. I took measurements from the doll, drew a pattern and cut out the pieces. Then I stitched the edges. Everything seemed fine, but in the end I thought the length was still too long and needed to be shortened by almost a half. So I made the second one shorter and had to redo the first one from the beginning. For the dress fabric I decided not to buy material from a fabric store as I usually do it, but to cut it from the clothing instead. I found this shirt and I liked that it had elastic sections, just like the area around Wanda's hips in her dress. The fabric was also thin and soft. I initially planned to use the gathered elastic parts, but it didn't work out. Removing the elastic left noticeable holes and the remaining material wasn't long enough in one of directions. After drafting the dress pattern, I started sewing it. The actress's clothes fits closely to her body, so it was important to make everything tailored to her figure. For the lining fabric, I chose another shirt which had a small polka dot pattern. After cutting and steaming the fabric, I carefully cut out and sewed all the pieces together. By the way, I forgot to mention that this is my first female figurine. I'm happy with the dress, so now I'm on to the jacket. For the jacket, I found a leather bag made of real leather. Unfortunately, it was made of small stitched together sections, but I didn't have many options, so I started unpicking the seams. Luckily, the jacket is small with short sleeves, so the pieces I had were enough. The leather was quite soft, so I had to work very carefully. Sewing at high speed would tear the leather. I love how it fits and everything worked out on the first try. Well, except for when my sewing machine broke a couple of steps before finishing, and I had to take it in for repairs and waiting for several days to bring it back home, but that's a minor detail. Oh, and I didn't forget to add the gradient just like on the jacket in the movie. Now comes the most exciting and challenging part, the hat. I purchased a 3D model of the hat and printed it on a 3D printer. I carefully washed and dried the pieces. Oh, and I printed them in 3 different sizes with 3mm difference to each of them to find the best fit. The extra heads were saved for tests and practice. Working with an airbrush produces paint fumes that can stain the surrounding surfaces, so to avoid extra cleaning, I covered the area around my workspace. This method is very convenient and everything stays clean after work. I sand the head slightly to remove visible support marks and apply a black primer. Painting the head is a process that requires patience and focus. It might look simple and quick, but in reality it takes an entire day. In my case, it was also important to match the skin tone with the body as the neckline was exposed. I let the paint dry well overnight and the next day I start working on the hair. I prefer using natural hair because it looks more realistic and it is easier to handle and fix the hair position. I smooth the stands onto the head and trim the excess length. It's also necessary to thin out the ends. I use a scalpel for this, but any sharp blade will work. Just be careful not to overdo it and take care of your fingers. I tuck the front locks behind the ear. Next, I paint the nails black and move on to creating the necklaces. For this, I took the smallest chain I had. I cut a pendant shape out of metal plate and attached it to the chain using gold wire. For the second pendant, I added a tiny gold bead. Finally, the last step was to make the stockings. For this, I used women's nylon stockings and experimented with different ways to make them look worn or damaged. I attached the head to the body and voila! Here's my Wanda. I'm so happy with how she turned out. I was worried about making her look too rough since this is my first time creating a female figure, but I think I did a great job. By the way, I couldn't find any other figures of her in this outfit, so maybe mine is the first? But if you've seen one, let me know in the comments where I can check it out. And for you, please subscribe, leave a comment about whether you liked the video or the figurine, and I'm off to work on my next project. That's it for today. Bye bye!